Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be talking about why America is losing a tech war with China, and this is in the nationalinterest.org website. And so it's going to be very heavily focused on American propaganda and the American framing and perspective on things. So we'll probably provide a lot of critique for it. So let's see what this article says about why America is losing the tech war with China. So the article says it's simply too late to try to suppress China. And that's hilarious hearing them say this now, because a year or two ago, when they started to really heavily suppress China's semiconductor ambitions and make sure that they couldn't work with other companies throughout the world, not only American companies, but they forced other countries to not work with China when it comes to semiconductors. And they thought that would be a massacre of the Chinese semiconductor industry, but it ended up leading to a lot of innovation, and they got to 7 nanometer and 5 nanometer chips far faster than the West expected. They expected China's industry would be permanently crippled, and that obviously did not happen. So this article goes on to say the United States must either spend seriously on research and development, which is not going to happen, along with industrial policy. Again, the United States has no policy objectives related to benefiting the United States. I've talked about this in other videos, but the United States benefits oligarchs, and that even comes at the expense of the average American person. And if it ever gets to the point where America collapses, the oligarchs just pick up and leave because they have the right of return to Israel because they are Zionists. And so the American oligarchs, they just do not care. They don't have any ambitions, any aspirations to make America a better country. They simply do not care. If something does not make them immediately profitable, they will not be doing it. So there is no research and development that's going to be occurring related to this. There's not going to be industrial policy that is focused on bettering the country, and it's going to definitively lose the technology race here. Western media, for the most part, has ignored a remarkable array of Chinese pilot products in industrial automation executed primarily by Huawei, the world's largest maker of telecommunication infrastructure and the target of a global suppression campaign by the United States. Okay, that's honest at least, because Huawei was expected to collapse after United States suppression of the company, and they just completely screwed over the company in terms of its supply chain. But China just won't let that happen. They could have let that happen and just have other companies come and really be the same workers but be rebranded. But they really thought, for their own national interest and patriotism, they couldn't just allow America to bully a Chinese company like that. And also for the international audience, they really wanted to show America lose, even when it was forcing economic punishments on other countries and other industries and other businesses within other countries. And so the example of Huawei and the example of Russia being able to not only withstand Western sanctions, but also thrive within them, really hurts America's image abroad, because other countries have said, well, we're going to just toe the line when it comes to America because we're scared of their sanctions. We're scared of them just completely destroying our company or destroying our country. And now Huawei and places like Russia have shown American sanctions can be withstood and you can benefit even from the sanctions. And so Huawei here has shown things like fully automated factories, mines, ports, and warehouses already are in operation. And there's the first commercial autonomous taxi service, which is starting up in Beijing, and that's Huawei also says the company has 10,000 contracts for private 5G networks in China, including 6,000 in factories. Huawei's cloud division has just launched a software platform designed to help Chinese businesses build proprietary AI systems using their own data. And I believe they're creating open source operating systems as well. So they're really innovating to make sure they're not reliant on the West in any way, shape, or form, because they understand the West is not reliable actors. They're not honest trade partners anymore. The article goes on to say there's no indication that the Biden administration's restrictions on high-end chips and the software and machines that make them have slowed China's drive for dominance in the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is the application of artificial intelligence to manufacturing, mining, farming, and logistics. I talked about this probably like 13 years ago, and I sent this out into the ether, just sent out some articles I wrote up saying like, hey, China, you need to get on the ball with this. Artificial intelligence is going to be super important. I talked about the reasons for it. I talked about the point where there's going to be like a singularity where the AI is essentially updating itself, and you have to be the country ahead when this ends up happening. And I don't know if anyone ever saw those things I wrote, but it seems like everything I said is coming true. So I'm really glad for that. The article goes on to say, although the fog of tech war makes it hard to evaluate China's progress with precision, available information points to surprisingly rapid progress in China's efforts to work around technology restrictions. So there are three potential outcomes this article talks about. China's single-minded goal is to lead the next wave of industrial technology. Former World Bank chief economist Justin Yifu Lin, now a professor at Peking University and a counselor of China's State Council, wrote in a 2021 book, China's 5G technology has become the world leader in the new industrial revolution. In the past few years, the U.S. has repeated its old tricks and suppressed Chinese companies with groundless accusations, using all of its national resources. If the U.S. succeeds in suppressing China by means of a blockade in the new industrial revolution, China will not be able to achieve its second centennial goal. How can China break through the U.S. blockade? It can only do this by working hard to lead the new industrial revolution. And that's exactly what it's doing. China is leading in the application of AI and high-speed broadband to business productivity. This can have one of three outcomes. Okay, so let's see what we agree with here. The United States and its allies make a concerted effort to leapfrog China and reclaim technological leadership in industry. That's not going to happen. I put that at a below 1% chance of happening. That's like, the United States just doesn't have the know-how for these things anymore. It doesn't focus on these things. It's not a culture and civilization built to do this anymore. Okay, let's see what the next one is. America and Europe adopt Chinese industrial technology and become followers, as China was a follower of developed markets a generation ago. I'm not even sure if the United States is going to be able to be a follower at this point. Same with Europe. They are just not functioning societies anymore. They're really just collapsing. And I emphasize this so much, and people just I don't think they get it, which is that the West is in terminal decline. It's falling down extremely slowly, and there's going to come a point where it falls down extremely quickly. Okay? And that could be within the next few years. I know a lot of intelligent people I've talked to about this, and I was initially thinking, back when I was in my 20s, I was thinking something like by 2030 through 2040, definitively pretty much by 2050, the United States was just going to be, it's going to collapse. But now, both myself and various intellectuals I've talked to really think it's by the end of this decade. In fact, the next American election is going to be very key because really going to, I think, to a large extent, decide the person who is in charge during the collapse of America. So I don't even think America and Europe is going to be able to be followers at that point. They're just not going to have the capability to even be able to even copy the technology. So the third scenario is America continues to lose market share in industry and increases import dependency following the UK's path of industrial decline. I think they're forgetting something here, which is the United States was willing, no, the United Kingdom was willing to allow itself to decline slowly and its time in the spotlight wane as a global hegemon because it was passing on the mantle to the United States. The United States is not thrilled about passing on the mantle to China. That's not something they're willing to do. And so there's going to be increased hostility. I think there's going to be actual military conflict between these two countries because the United States is just not going to go quietly into its own collapse. And so this notion of industrial decline just being something America would allow, I don't think it's going to happen. Whoever the next president is going to be really important. I don't think they have any good choices in America either. So no matter what, it's just going to be bumbling buffoons in charge of America, in charge of forcing a war with China. And that's not just me saying it. China obviously believes this, given how they're reacting to the situation. There are American political officials, there are American military officials talking about a war with China by the end of this decade at the latest. So really, you don't have to believe me. Believe the people who have inside information. And I'm just gleaning this information and using common sense and critical thinking to figure out whether something is actually occurring or not. Okay, so the article goes on to say, the first option will require an industrial policy of some kind. America has turned towards such through the CHIP Act. Okay, I don't think that's going to happen. To some extent, the second option, adopting Chinese technology, already is taking hold in increments. As noted below, only American companies that have already large-scale manufacturing operations in China have adopted AI and 5G applications entirely in the auto and related sectors. Third alternative, continued deindustrialization, is unacceptable. Yeah, see, that's what I was talking about, where they could do that if they wanted to, like the UK, but they don't want to because they're not willingly passing on the mantle to China like UK was willingly passing on the mantle to the United States. There was conversations in the United Kingdom during their decline saying, listen, we're just not a large enough country to continue to manage this situation. Let's pass it on to our fellow Anglo-Saxon culture, the United States. The United States is not doing that now. They're not saying like, listen, we're not a big enough country to handle being the global hegemon anymore. Let's pass it on to China. That's not conversations that are happening within the intellectual political circles of America. Okay? They are openly hostile towards it. And you can see it in this national interest article. The third alternative of continued deindustrialization, which is the most likely scenario, they consider unacceptable, which means that war is going to be occurring. Okay, so the article goes on to talk about China's chip dominance and the failure of U.S. tech controls. Western analysts have overestimated the impact of technology controls on China and underestimated China's ability to work around them. The United States has gotten so reliant on economic sanctions that they don't really know what to do when those economic sanctions fail. They're failing against China, they're failing against Russia, failing against Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, again and again. They're just failing. Okay? And the United States doesn't have a backup plan. If their usage of the US dollar as the global reserve and trade currency doesn't work as a sufficient cudgel for these various countries, then they don't have a plan B, except for war, which hasn't worked for them, but that's all they have left to try. Okay, so they're just talking about the Huawei sales, and on the contrary, the numbers of 5G base stations in China doubled in 2021 to 1.43 million, despite all the sanctions against places like Huawei. Now it appears Huawei can design its own high-end chips and manufacture them in China. So they are doing 7nm chips, 5nm chips. They're still working on communication technology, internet connectivity, things like that. Okay, yeah, they talk about that here. Local firms using older 14nm chips. Isn't clear whether SMIC can make enough 7nm chips to meet Huawei's requirements, or whether the reported new 5G chips use another technology, for example, stacking two 14nm. No, we know definitively since this article was written, it was 7nm chips, and now they're also producing 5nm chips. Okay, so yeah, they're talking about different types of technology Huawei's making. And they talk about how the new technologies are in the embryonic stage, but they're coming up with ways to innovate and make it production levels of scale. Okay, Huawei has built an AI cloud platform based on the Kunping and Ascend processor, supporting a suite of AI software. Yeah, that's the thing where right now when it comes to large language models like ChatGPT and Bard and things like that, China's behind, but they have access to so much data they can use to train various artificial intelligence large language models that they could, I think, pretty easily catch up. And so China's recognizing this is one area of artificial intelligence they haven't focused on as much as they should. And so I think they're going to catch up probably within the year, unless things change in some way that is unforeseeable. Okay, so they go on to talk about the overriding issue is that industrial systems rarely require the complexity and computing power that ChatGPT applies to composing school essays and Valentine's Day poems. China can't import the fastest and most efficient chips with gateways of 7nm or less, let alone the equipment to manufacture them, but it can make 7nm chips with a costlier processor approximate the performance of the fastest chips by stacking older chips into so-called chiplets, or jerry-rig, I think that's supposed to be jerry-rig older chips to approximate the performance of newer ones through clever system architecture. So think of the old railroad in the 19th century, which made it profitable to grow large crops far from water transport. This unleashed ripple effects that made the U.S. economy the world's largest. Whether the train traveled at 40 or 80 miles an hour made a small difference to its impact on the broader economy. What mattered is that the distance could be crossed. The combination of AI and high-speed broadband creates a data highway that will transform the way most businesses run. Okay, so the thing is, they're talking about here, even if a 14nm chip is slower than a 7nm chip in most circumstances, they could still work with the 7nm chips. They could just make their computers and things like that bigger, use more chips in order to have more capacity to make artificial intelligences, to train artificial intelligences. Thing is, the United States focuses on the miniaturization process and make sure it could be something that's traded and used, sold to people as a consumer product. China doesn't really need to do that in most cases when it comes to having a national competitive advantage. They can have larger semiconductor chip building processes. They can have larger various pieces of equipment because they don't have to worry about selling it as much as using it for the national autonomy and sovereignty of their country. So if you found this video to be helpful, please give us a thumbs up. It helps us in the algorithm. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Rumble for more content. I love making these videos, and I love just seeing people wanting to engage with it. We are being suppressed in the algorithm, though, so if you can help us by word of mouth, telling people about our channel, get our perspective out there. If you think it could be enlightening to people, we would appreciate that. We do have other ways of marketing it, but we always appreciate any help that our viewers can give us. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.